my song, praising my Savior all the day long.
Hi, I'm Kristen, and I just wanted to share my life story with you and just how God's worked in my life and shown his faithfulness and just proved to me that his plan and timing are perfect. So I was born into a Christian home to two wonderful godly parents, and I'm the second of four kids. I was born in Peterborough, Ontario, and when I was 8 we moved to Bancroft. My dad used to be a teacher, a principal, and then he was called into full-time ministry, so that's why we moved. And I was about 5 years old when I accepted Jesus. We used to always pray with my mom at our bedside, me and my sister, when we were little. And one night I said, okay, I want to ask Jesus to save me from my sin. So I did, and I don't think I really fully understood what that meant at the time, but I believe that's when I accepted Christ. And then I remember being about 12 years old in church. I started to actually listen and not just draw pictures, and I started to take notes and listen to what the speaker was saying, and I realized that being a Christian is not just it shouldn't just be part of your life. It's supposed to be your whole life, a surrendering of your life to God. So that's kind of where things started to change for me. And then I went to camp, Graphite Bible Camp near Bancroft, as a camper when I was 12. And then I started being a counselor there when I was 14 up till age 20. And then that was a really helpful time, faith-building time in my life. It helped me learn how to develop a personal time with God every day and just really helped me grow in my faith. And it was actually ironically at camp that I started to have my first doubts about God and just wondering if he was even real and just questioning my faith and everything. And I was concerned because how could I be telling kids about God if I didn't know for sure if he was real? So my cousin and I were both going through this at the same time. So I remember one night on the docks, we prayed together and just asked God to show himself to us if he was real. So we did, and then a few days later, she came up to me with this book in her hand, The Purpose-Driven Life, and she said, okay, you need to read this chapter. This is the answer to our prayers. And it was called When God Seems Distant. So I read it, and it was like it was written just for me, and it was like God was speaking directly to me. And I started crying, and I'm looking up. I'm like, okay, that was definitely you. So it was just a really reassuring time where God kind of just showed himself real. And yeah, it was really confirming to me. And so at that point, I was graduating high school, and I was applying to colleges. And I ended up deciding on Durham College in Oshawa. So moved in with my aunt and uncle and cousins in Whitby, and went there for a 2-year program. It was medical office administration, and that time was actually really helpful for me in my faith because I joined the Christian group on campus there. I gained a lot of great friends who helped encourage me and challenge me spiritually and just helped me grow a lot. I was able to co-lead a Bible study, participate in some evangelism on campus, and after college I went on a missions trip, my first missions trip to South Africa for a month, and I was working at a baby's home there, and that was a really eye-opening experience for me. And I went on a couple other trips down the road, but that was my first one. And then after I graduated, I had done a placement at the end of my program, and I ended up getting hired as a part-time medical secretary in a general surgeon's office, and then that turned into a full-time job. And yeah, so I was just blessed in a lot of different ways. God provided me with different places to live, with family and other Christian people over those years. And so things were really, I guess, looking good in my life. Like God had answered so many prayers and things seemed to be going really well. The one thing though, I always really wanted to be in a relationship. I wanted to be married someday and have kids. So I was just praying about that and trying to wait on God. And at the time, my sister had recently gotten married, my cousin, and 2 of my best friends. And I was just feeling like, okay, hopefully my time's coming soon. I don't know. But yeah, and then at that time as well, I started noticing all these weird symptoms, and I didn't know if they were related. I thought they were all from different issues, but some of the symptoms were just weight gain over a long period of time. And I thought, since it was so gradual, that it was just natural weight gain. I'm like, okay, well, I'm eating more. I'm at a sedentary job, so it's probably just natural. But I was eating a lot more, which wasn't like me. And I was having just unpredictable emotions all over the place and just crying at weird things at weird times. And I didn't understand what was going on. Some of my friends tried to help me lose weight. Like, I tried to, count calories and work out and stuff like that, but nothing was really working. So I didn't know what was going on. And then for a total period of 10 months, I didn't have my time of the month. So that was concerning. I saw my doctor. I'm like, what's going on? And she said, well, we'll do some tests and we'll see. We'll do ultrasounds, urine tests, blood work. We'll just see what this might be. So they couldn't find anything for the longest time. And then finally, she's like, well, there's Cushing syndrome. It's a really rare disease, and it's like affects 13 in 1 million people. She said, you probably don't have that, but we'll check and we'll just rule it out. So it turns out I actually did have Cushing syndrome, which it's, really rare. So my doctor was shocked, and so was I. But I was kind of relieved because at least I knew what all these weird symptoms were from. So yeah, it was kind of nice to know, but in a way it was also scary because I'm like, okay, well, now what? What is this? What do we do to treat it? And so she told me that there was a tumor somewhere in my body that was causing all these weird symptoms and causing an extremely high level of cortisol, which is a hormone that affects a ton of different things in your body. So we did imaging and found out that the tumor was in my right adrenal gland, and that is like right above your kidney. And the other option was it could have been in my brain, my pituitary gland. So I'm really thankful it was there. And the treatment was to remove the whole adrenal gland. So I'd have surgery to remove that. And apparently that would solve everything. So once I found that out, I was kind of terrified because even though I worked for a surgeon and booked people's surgeries, I just never wanted to have surgery myself. But I had to. But it was also a blessing that I worked for the surgeons because I knew all of them and I was able to get booked in really quickly. So that was good. But this whole time, of course, my emotions are going crazy and I'm just like, what is going on? And praying and asking God why this is happening. And, this whole time I've been wanting to be in a relationship and now this is happening. I'm like, well, nobody's going to like me like right now. I don't even look like myself. My face had swollen up to like the size of a soccer ball. I'm not kidding. A moon face. That's like one of the main symptoms of Cushing's. So I didn't even look like myself. And I was just feeling really discouraged and even more behind in life. And I was not sure if this would affect fertility in the future and all these questions. And I just remember one night just sitting on my bed and crying and just asking God what's going on, I guess. And I just remember feeling him very close to me in just such a comforting way. It literally felt like he was giving me a hug, and I just have never, I felt that maybe a few times since, but it was just a really special moment, and I knew that God was with me. So that was really reassuring. And then also my church family at the time was very supportive, my own family as well. But they were all praying for me throughout every stage of this. And then the day I had my surgery, I remember thinking that I would have been nervous, but I woke up just almost excited. I'm like, okay, let's do this. And I didn't feel nervous at all. I just felt peace. And I think that can only be attributed to God, his peace that passes understanding. So I had the surgery, and thank God everything went well. And then about 6 months later, almost all my symptoms were gone. I went back to my normal size and appearance. And I just have to take vitamin D. I get bone density tests. But other than that, that's basically the only residual symptoms. So that was an interesting time in my life. But I know that God used it to draw me closer to him and to just grow me in my faith and just to teach me to trust him more, because up till that point, things have been going well, and not that it was a bad thing necessarily, but it was something that a trial God used to draw me closer to Him.
Okay, hi. My name's Connor. I'm Kristen's husband, and I'm going to tell my side of the things and where we met up, and then carry on from there. So I grew up, I'm the oldest of 4 kids. I grew up in a small farming community about an hour and a half east of Toronto, little tiny town called Castleton. I remember going to a church. My family were believers, and we went to a church in Trenton. I remember this long week of gospel meetings they had. I was, I think, 10 or 11, and during that week, I just remember the speaker, some of the messages, some of the ideas he tried to get across, and some of those ideas really stuck with me and really started to work in my life and really work in my heart. And another thing that really tugged on my heartstrings, there was a man, he was a brother of one of our church members there. He came back to the church. He had gone when he was a little kid, but he reattended the church on our last gospel meeting of that week on the Friday night, and he had actually received Christ. And this man was a war vet. He was an alcoholic. He was a very abusive person, and just to see that transformation in somebody so different, come to somebody to be so gentle and caring, and it really had a huge impact on my life. So that, along with the various gospel messages I heard that week, I believe that's what contributed to me giving my life to Christ. I don't remember the exact day. I think it was 11 or 12. I remember the room I was in. I remember basically just sitting there on my pillow at night and just fretting and worrying about eternity and thinking, you know, if there is a God, there is a heaven, there is a hell. I want to make sure I'm on the right side of that. And not only that, but I want to make sure I have a relationship here too. And there's got to be more to life than just living it for ourselves and then dying. So then and there, I committed my life to Jesus Christ and became a born-again believer. And I remember the weight that was lifted off of my chest, even being such a young kid, 10 or 11, like I said. It was incredible. And from there, I was able to start the journey of faith. As I got older, I had some really close friends. We all worked together on the same farms, and eventually it got to the point where we were all finishing up school at the same time. It came time to start looking into picking a career. And various experiences gave me an idea that I wanted to be a police officer. It had been one of those childhood dreams, I guess, but it was my time to start picking a career. So I thought, well, I'll go to college, maybe take police foundations. Maybe that'll give me a better idea as to what I want to do. Maybe I want that job, maybe I don't. So I enlisted in Loyalist College for police foundations. I went there when I was about 20, and just before I actually started my first semester, I was able to spend the entire summer at Hope Valley Day Camp up in Peterborough. And it was a great time, a really good 6 or 7 weeks of just solid encouragement. I made a lot of really good connections there, built a lot of really good friendships there as well. Just a really good spot to prepare yourself and as a believer, and to get ready for whatever the world has. Just being just around other believers, constantly singing the praises of Jesus and sharing his word with other people. It was an excellent, encouraging time, that's for sure. So from there, I go off to college. I do very well in college, and I end up graduating and thinking, you know, this is definitely something I want to do. I was able to do a couple placement programs as well, and ended up loving the job, or what I could see of it at that point anyway. And I graduate college. From there, I'm still working on a pig farm at that point, and I started thinking, well, I'm not really getting great law enforcement experience working with animals. Don't get me wrong, it was excellent work. I loved the job, but I definitely needed more experience when it comes to law enforcement. So I started thinking and praying about it, and I thought, well, security seems to be something that's there. There seems to be a lot of jobs. Why don't I try that? So I ended up getting my security guard license and started throwing in some applications that fall. And I remember specifically looking for jobs in and around where I grew up. And if you were to look at where I grew up, there's no cities anywhere near me. I think the closest one would have been Peterborough or Belleville, and that's the better part of an hour's drive. So that meant I would have had to go to either one of those two cities or go to a bigger city where there's even many more jobs, and that was Toronto. So I started throwing in applications wherever I could see an opening, and I believe it was a day later, I ended up scheduling myself for a couple interviews in Toronto. I went on a Tuesday into the city, and the first interview I had was excellent. The company owner was an ex-OPP officer. He seemed like he was on the ball, and it seemed like a really good place to work. It was event security at bars and nightclubs. And I thought, well, this is an excellent opportunity. Why not? So at the end of the interview, he offered me a job, and he said, "Are you okay to start Thursday?" I was like, "Oh, sure, yeah, absolutely. I'll take what I can get. For sure, I'd be happy to." So without really having much time to think about it, I'm driving home, and home from Toronto is about an hour and a half, almost 2 hours drive, depending on the traffic at that time. And I'm thinking, oh man, this is going to be quite a long drive, especially after working at an afternoon shift, getting off at 3 or 4 in the morning. It's going to be a long haul. So I started praying about it on my way home. By the time I got home, I thought, okay, well, I can email, shoot out a message to a few different chapels I know of. So I did that. I emailed a couple different chapels. One of them got back to me right away. The contact that I had there was so good. He's like, okay, I understand you'll probably need a place to stay, probably need transportation, and as well, we've got great programs here at our chapel that we'd love to get you plugged into. So I took him up on that offer, and literally that evening I was scheduled to go have dinner with people I was potentially able to stay with. I went and had dinner, and right away it just felt like a great fit. It felt like God had really opened a great door here. So after spending the evening there with those folks in Pickering, it was all set. I had my own car at that time. I now had a church to go to. I now had a place to live. Everything was set. So literally in the span of 48 hours, I went from working on a pig farm, living in the country, to working a security job right downtown Toronto and living in Pickering. It was awesome just to see God move that rapidly when I had that need. So as time marches on, I'm in the job. I'm really enjoying it, getting a lot of great experience. And I was also attending a young man's Bible study with a bunch of buddies of mine up in Peterborough. And for whatever reason, a bunch of those guys decided to sit me down after one of our Bible studies and just have a serious chat with me. That chat was regarding my work. They didn't feel that it was God's will that I was working where I was. Just being in that atmosphere, they felt that it wasn't right for Christians to be working alongside people getting drunk or serving alcohol or any of the nightclub atmosphere. They just didn't feel it was right. So I really took to heart what they had said, and unfortunately, I feel a couple of those friends kind of turned their back on me because they saw that perhaps I wasn't going to change my way instantly. And this kind of shook my faith. So much so that it kind of led down to me having thoughts of, well, maybe God isn't real, maybe he is. I don't really know. Now, while this is all going on, I had started attending the Bible chapel in Ajax, and literally my first night there, it was a Sunday evening service. Right after the service, they had a nice social time. I ended up sitting down with this girl named Kristen Libby. Almost said Kristen Tate. So I sat down with this girl named Kristen Libby. We talked for probably an hour and a half, and it was such a good chat. It was so cool just to talk to somebody around my age who wasn't currently dating or married or seeing anybody, but they were also really vulnerable. Kristen was really honest and open with me at that time, telling me all about her illness and the possible outcome of this disease that she had. And it was about a month and a half before her surgery. So at this point, she was also at the peak of all of her symptoms. And the most realistic symptom that still stands out to me is just how round her face was. If you were to see a picture of her today in comparison to then, you wouldn't think it's the same person. So to see that moon-shaped face, that's what they call it, right? Yeah, it was incredible. So anyways, Kristen and I got to know one another over the next few months. She went and had the surgery. And I think there was about a time period of 2 or 3 months I didn't see her. I was working late or on the weekends or whatever, and she was, when I was at church, she would be at her parents'. However that worked, I'm not sure. Anyways, it was a couple months I hadn't seen her. And I ended up seeing her again in November or December, and literally she looked like a completely different person. And it was really cool just to see her kind of go through that transition, but also at the same time, just to see our relationship grow and grow and grow. And in a sense, I was able to get to know Kristen before I actually even knew what she looked like. So a few months go on, and I finally get the courage to ask her out. It was dreadful, but it eventually got out of my system, and I was able to pop the words out, and just like that, we're dating. So this is now the following summer. We're starting to date. Life is great. And again, these feelings of, well, maybe God's not true or real or there, they start creeping into my mind again. I'm working at the bar, and basically none of my friends in Peterborough, I barely had any contact with any of them, if I did at all. And this question keeps nagging me: is God real? Is this real, or is this just a big game? Is it a big joke? So Kristen and I had a couple close people to us in that church. We were able to sit down with them, and they were accountability partners as well. We were able to be totally honest with them. I was honest with them. Hey, I'm having a big time struggle here. I'm not really sure if God's true or not. And they really encouraged me to challenge God in a respectful way, but challenge him. Pray about it and ask him to reveal himself, and he will. So I thank God he really pressured me to do that. I went home. I started praying really, really hard. God, I don't know if you're real, but I really need to see you work, because I'm really starting to wonder if this is true. I go into work that night and get through the entire night. I think it's around 2:45, 3 o'clock in the morning. We're just closing up the bar, and one of my good buddies there, who's one of the bartenders, he just starts chatting to me. Hey, Connor, been talking about faith and religion and God and weird things like that. You're a church guy, aren't you? Yeah, I am, Joe. Actually, I am. Oh, okay, cool. Well, do you want to do a Bible study? I know it's kind of weird, but how do you feel about that? Like, say after we're done work on a Tuesday, maybe even Thursdays, do you want to do a Bible study? Is that something we could do? I was like, Joe, yeah, absolutely. What do you want to learn about? And he's like, well, I've been thinking about Jesus, this Jesus Christ, this person I've always heard of, and then dragons and heaven and hell and lions and sheep and all of these cool things. I kind of want to learn more about it. So bang, just like that, literally just like that, God answered a prayer. I was all of a sudden having these Bible studies, and I think they were once a week. They lasted about 6 months. Now, I don't know if my friend Joe ever got saved. We've lost contact since then, but the gospel came out several times, almost to the point where Joe was cutting me off because he could get excited and literally tell me, no, don't blow it for me. That's Jesus. He's going to jump in and save the day here. It's like, yeah, Joe, you got it. You understand the gospel. You see what's going on. So just to see God work in that huge way for me was incredible. I felt my faith grow mountains that summer. So time presses on and life is good. We end up getting engaged. I'm still applying to be a police officer. I have been the past few years since I graduated college. And every application I put in, nothing's working. Nothing's working at all. I would get called for an interview here and there, go for the interview and not really succeed beyond that. So we get engaged. I start looking at, again, applying to different services, hopefully before our wedding. Hopefully it wouldn't have interfered too much. And it's getting closer and closer to our wedding. Nothing's really working out again. So we start thinking, well, maybe policing isn't what God wants our path to be. Maybe it's something else. So we start praying about that. We end up going to an info session run by the OPP up in Aurelia. And we go there, it's about a month before our wedding. And the big thing at that info session that we both took away from was the OPP really considers any supervisor role that people can take in their current job. So we leave that info session. On our drive home, we start praying about it, like, God, if there's a door that's going to open here, can you please open it if policing is the way? And the light bulb kind of opened up in my mind. And I thought, oh, Kristen, there's a supervisor position at my current job, which was at Centennial College at that point. I was a security guard there as well. And we both thought, okay, well, if it's meant to be, let's throw an application in. What's the worst that can happen? No. So we did that. We threw in the application, and I got hired as a supervisor in the security, not security program, but the security bureau there about 3 or 4 days before our wedding. Just incredible answer to prayer. So we go, we get married, it's awesome. Honeymoon, we come back, and I start training in this new position. It's excellent. We throw in an application to the Ottawa Police as well as the OPP, and what do you know? My status as an applicant keeps progressing and progressing. I'm doing well in all of the interviews and tests. It's so much so that just after Christmas, like just a few days after Christmas that same year, it's a part of most policing hiring processes that an interviewer or somebody comes to your house and pays a house visit just to go over your complete application file and just to kind of get to know you and your family on a personal level. So literally 2 or 3 days after Christmas, OPP as well as Ottawa Police, they both schedule home interviews. Both of them attend. It's great. We really enjoyed it. After it was all said and done, there was something about the OPP that was just excellent. We really liked the recruiter that came. He was excellent with Kristen. He was excellent with me. He answered all of our questions. He gave us so much time, and he was so considerate, and everything about that whole thing was just awesome. So we thought, well, God, maybe this is going to work out. We still weren't sure. Time again moves on a few months, and out of the blue, Ottawa says, well, Connor, we don't think you're a suitable applicant, so we're going to drop your file. That was discouraging. A couple months press on, and nothing more from OPP. At this point, we're thinking, well, maybe it's going to be a rejection letter coming in the mail at some point. And we do get a letter. We open it up, and it says, you've potentially been selected to be a part of a pilot project run by the OPP. This pilot project is going to require you to pick 6 locations in either the Northeast region and or the Northwest region of Ontario. So quickly, I think they needed a response within 2 or 3 days. Quickly, Kristen and I started thinking, well, I mean, we don't really know Northern Ontario. We're both very familiar with Southern Ontario, living near Toronto at that point. Okay, well, let's start throwing some names and towns on the list here. They need 6, so hey, let's start picking some around Sudbury and North Bay and maybe up near Timmins. And I don't know what that's like, but I'm sure it's fine. We kind of heard things about it. Everything sounds great. So sure, let's send that list of towns in and see what happens. So time goes on. It's 2, I think 3 months by this point. And just like that, July 26th, I think it was, 2019, we get this call, and the recruiter says, hey, Connor, we've accepted you for this pilot project class. You've been selected to go to Warren. Do you have any idea where that is? And I have no idea, but I accept. Like, I don't care where it is. I could be going up to Kenora. I really don't care. Okay, excellent. Well, you're not going that far. It's just between North Bay and Sudbury. So you'll start training in August. And that's really when our life started to change. And I think we did a lot of growing up very quickly. And I'm going to turn it over to Kristen. She's going to explain a little bit more of that.
Okay, so as Connor was saying, that was a massive answer to prayer for us after years of hard work on Connor's part. And we learned a lot through that whole journey. He got so close with so many different police services, and we're like, okay, this is happening. And then at the last minute, God would close the door, and we're like, what is going on? Like, is this even meant to be? And then when we got that call, it was just so worth the wait. And we could see that it was God's timing in so many different ways. And just on that whole journey of Connor applying and going through all those ups and downs, we learned a lot of lessons. We learned patience. We learned trust in God's perfect plan and timing. We learned perseverance and how to rest in God while waiting and just be content with where He had us at the time, which wasn't always easy. But we're so thankful that we waited, and that we waited on God's timing, and that it happened the way it did. And looking back even now, only just over a year later, it's amazing to see just all the, I guess, the reasons that God chose that timing. And one of them was Connor had a Christian coworker who he'd met through Toronto Police. He was doing parking enforcement there. That was his last job before he got hired by OPP. And his name's Tony, so Connor ended up getting hired to go to the same class at Ontario Police College as Tony was going to. He was hired by Toronto Police. So they got to carpool together every week for 3 months, and they got to pray together every Sunday night when they got there, and it was just a really encouraging time for Connor, and we're just so thankful he had another believer to go to this training with. And then about 3 weeks, before we got the call from OPP, we had been told by our landlords, we lived in a basement apartment at the time, we were told that they were selling their house and that we needed to move. So we're like, okay, what do we do? Because we're waiting to see if we're getting this call and whether we're moving super far north or not. And we didn't know what to do. So then we got the call. We were so excited, but then we still didn't know what to do, because most places need you to sign a lease for a year or at least 6 months, and we just weren't sure. So we started looking around just different places we could live just for a temporary situation. And we ended up moving in with the lady I used to live with before we got married. And so it was actually perfect timing for her as well, because her husband had just had to be admitted to a nursing home because he had Parkinson's. And so she was lonely and wanted somebody to live with her. And so I got to live with her for those 6 months while Connor was in training, and he would come home on the weekends. And it was just really cool to see God's timing even in that. And then just moving out of our apartment and just being able to store our stuff at Connor's parents' house. And then buying our house up here was interesting because we lived 4.5 hours away, and we got to come up one weekend to look at a bunch of houses and decide basically then which house we wanted to buy, because there wasn't much selection at the time. It was the fall. And so we decided on one, and then we came back up for another Saturday, had our home inspection, and then that all went well. At first I didn't like the house, but then when I saw it again, I'm like, no, this is great. And the backyard's great for a dog and kids, whatever. And we were just really thankful that God provided us with that house. And not to mention the cost was amazing compared to the GTA. And then when we actually moved in January of 2020, my parents were able to come help because Connor was still in training. And so the other interesting thing was trying to line up all of our stuff to be delivered on the same day. We had the movers come deliver our stuff. We needed our appliances to be delivered. We needed our internet to get set up all on the same day. And that was challenging, but again, God just helped it all fall into place, and it ended up being all done on the same day. Everything was fine. And just so many answers to prayer. Looking back, we just are so blessed to be part of Bethel and just have a great new church family. It was really hard leaving our old church family because we were really close to so many people there. But we've already got to know so many people here and made new friends. We're so thankful for that. And even our neighbors on our street, we've got to know a few of them quite well. And we're feeling very blessed to be where we are. And we can see now why God led us here. At least some of the reasons. There's probably more we don't even know about yet. So a few months after we moved here, it was like the spring of 2020. So last year, we decided that we wanted to start trying to have a family, trying to get pregnant. So we did, actually, more quickly than we thought. And it was so exciting. We got this positive test. We're like, whoa, this is awesome. But then a few days later, I started having this bleeding, and I'm like, oh no, this isn't normal, I don't think. So I went to the hospital, and I was told that I'd had an early miscarriage. And it was just a big shock because, you know, we weren't even expecting anything to happen that soon. And then this happened, and it was really sad and really difficult to go through and emotional, especially for me, just going through all the hormone changes and all of that. So that was a tough time, and again, something that God drew us closer to Him through, and really just, I guess, showed us how much of a privilege it is to be able to have children and even to be able to get pregnant. So we just really, I guess, learned to value that more. And then thankfully, a few months later, we were able to get pregnant again. And that's with this baby girl. And so we're really thankful that everything's gone pretty well so far. And she's due in 5 weeks now. And we're just so grateful. So just some things we learned from that is just to be thankful for each day with our baby. We don't know how long God will give us with her, even after she's born, Lord willing. But it's just, again, something we have to fully trust Him with this little life. And we're so thankful, and we're really excited to be parents. So that was a journey that was challenging, but also a journey that's so exciting that we're still on.
So one verse that really stands out to Kristen and I, just as we tell a little bit of our stories and how they kind of just connect and bring us to this point here, is in Romans 11:36. It's everything comes from Him and exists by His power and is intended for His glory. And it's a verse that's spoken to both Kristen and I. It really just shows us how you can be up on a mountain, you can be down in a valley. God will lead you over that mountain, He'll lead you through that valley, but everything is intended for His glory. So we hope that our story kind of shares that same sentiment, and yeah, all glory to our God.
This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long.